Okay, good. All right. Oh, and here comes Dr. Harrison. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining. We are recording, so we'll make this available for folks to replay. I certainly, and Rebecca actually sent me a note. Do we think maybe we would do more of these? Definitely open to it. And I think depending on sort of the interest, it's easy to jump on. I expect that this kind of call could be done in 30 minutes, and we tee up some of the things that we're hearing a lot, and sort of offer some best practices and some of the ideas that seem to be working, and then we have an opportunity for Q&A. So I'll start with just a thank you for the feedback, because we've heard a ton of feedback. We know that things have not gone perfectly. I would say, if there's this much that needs to be done to sort of execute a sort of perfect form of distance learning, I think, the work that we did before was immense, and sort of preparing the teachers and sort of, getting everything ready and making sure, whether it was the hardware or the webcams or the, sort of getting people into that mode of being ready to sort of engage those students from home. There was a lot to that. And this last part of, creating consistency and making sure that we're communicating out those links effectively, like, thank you for the feedback where we haven't done it perfectly. And also, thank you for the patience to, sort of bear with us as we try to get that perfect, that closer to that perfect process. I have a couple of best practices that I wanted to share based on some feedback that I've been hearing and other board members have been hearing, sort of on, I think, three main categories. So first, schedules; second, assignments; and then third, sort of best practices for students as they're doing distance learning. When we talk about the best practices for scheduling, last week when we met, we sort of did a little demonstration, showed how, and I'm actually going to share my screen here just to sort of do that again. Let's do that. And okay, and I'm just going to go, no, I don't want to show you hard drives. I want to show you this. Okay. All right. So if we're looking at calendar.google.com, right? First off, being logged in with your student's ER9 account, right? If you're on your own account or on your student's personal accounts, that's not really where you want to be. You want to be logged in to the ER9 account. And then if you go to calendar.google.com, you should see the various assignments that have been sort of assigned to your students here on the calendar, sort of with their due dates. That's very useful to see. But what we found to be very useful for sort of our own students, my sons, was to have them set up their classes here, so that when they're needing to click on a link to connect to to their classroom, that they're able to do that really easily. So we talked about doing that last week. You can set these up as a recurrence. So essentially you're setting up your 5 days of the week for the next several months, and it's once you've done that, it's done, and I could go forward to any date, and I can see they're all there as recurring meetings, and I've got the link, so it's really easy. It's kind of foolproof now for them, and they even have it on sort of smartphones and iPads and like whatever other device that they're logged in with their ER9 stuff. So that's great. But in addition to that, one of the things that I found is particularly sort of necessary as I'm trying to partner with my students. I'm home. I know a lot of people are sort of still working from home. And so if at all possible, and we know not everybody has complete control over their calendars, but if it is possible to align with their lunch block, I found it to be really useful. The first couple of days this week were rough for me to be involved. And so, when I was able to jump in and say, okay, hold on, I'm gonna block out 30 minutes during their lunch block. And that means I can check in, say, like, how are things going? Like, and so make sure that, that I have a sense for any issues that are happening along the way, while also being able to sort of work the rest of my day. So just a sort of a best practice that, a friend of mine shared, that they did. And I went, oh, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe I didn't think of doing that. So just wanted to put that out there. For assignments, bear with me. For assignments, we had some, we struggled a bit. And I'll give you the beware of ninja cat warning, right? So what does that mean? If you've seen that YouTube video where you're like looking down the hallway and there's a cat way in the distance, and then it sort of tucks behind, and then the cat's closer, and then the cat's closer, right? Last week, when we jumped into the assignments and the to-do list, it was like, oh, look, there's 5 assignments. That's cute. And then suddenly there were 50, right? And it was a little bit daunting. And so they kind of snuck up on us. And, you know, when we started to go through all those assignments, we went, wait, what are we missing? And it turned out that there were a number of assignments that had been completed, but we didn't click done. So making sure that our students were not only sort of doing the work, but then making sure that they said done or submit and sort of finalize the submission of that work, you know, that made a big difference. The one other sort of tip is, you know, for these assignments that are being sort of graded by way of a sort of, you know, an answer key, you know, if there's an answer key in place and you misspell something, the answer keys don't tend to be very forgiving. So if you use the wrong form of the word, you know, to, or theirs, right? And you know, that's not even the point necessarily of the assignment. It doesn't matter, right? You got to make sure that they're sort of spelled right on some of these things. So, you know, sort of double checking before clicking done. And then finally, the sort of best practices for students. It can happen that you come into the classroom and you sort of wave at the, you know, if you're in a distance setting, you know, for hybrid or, you know, doing temporary learning from home, you sort of wave at the teacher, but the teacher didn't necessarily notice that you waved or that you came in. And so just sending a little message in the chat can be helpful to make sure, like, hey, I just want to make sure you saw I'm here. And then, you know, if you're not 100% sure that if the teacher didn't sort of recognize and call out, hey, you're here, you know, sending an email is not a bad idea, because then you have a sort of time-stamped thing that just says, hey, just want to make sure you notice that I'm here, because the chat disappears after the class is done, right? That chat's gone after the class is done. So it's a good idea to do that. The one last thing, distractions. So if you, like me, have ever walked into the room where your student is working, and last week we talked at length about Circle and Net Nanny and all of these tools. But even if you're using those tools, this can still happen. You walk into the room and you hear a click as you walk in, a mouse click. What does that mean? Well, it probably means that your student was on YouTube. So I'm going to give you one tip that I've used to great effect, and to say, hey, don't do that. If I hear a click when I come into this room, I'm assuming you were doing the wrong thing. Just when I come into the room, just don't click anything. Say hi. Say, hey, Dad, how's it going? So I'm going to show you. You should be seeing this. So let's say that our student is doing this instead of paying attention, watching this YouTube video that they should not be doing. And I walk into the room and they click. What you can do when you hear that click is just say, oh, just a sec, right click, reopen close tab, and you will see exactly what they were looking at a moment ago. So not rocket science, but it can be a very useful tool to say, hey, like, come on, we got to be able to trust you to sort of do this, do this work even when we're not hovering over your shoulder. And, you know, let's make sure that we're trying to stay focused, and don't click when I come in the room. Any questions about any of the sort of topics that we've touched on so far? No. Okay, good. Do we have questions?
Yeah, sorry. John, this is Alex. Sorry, it took me a second to get off mute.
Sure.
You know, when I go to my son's Chromebook and I go to the calendar, and he's elementary, but I don't see anything populated within the calendar. And so it looked like what you were showing was maybe high school versus elementary school, but just making sure. Yeah, so this is actually my middle schooler, so I have 6th graders. But let me show you what I think is probably what you're looking at, and Rebecca, you know, maybe knows exactly, but I'm just going to share my screen again.
John, I think part of it is that you guys went through and entered all of those classes into the calendar yourself.
Yes, yes, but I
But the
think
assignments are crossed.
it's probably the Google Classroom calendar link that you're looking at. So I'm just going to go back to, so here's Google Classroom. Alex, you're able to get here just fine, right?
I'm sure I could get there.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I didn't know this was turning into a test, but okay.
In theory, we can get here. So classroom.google.com. We're
Yeah.
logged in as our student. We're seeing the classes that they have. And I think for elementary school, it's generally set up. You have their sort of main teacher. And then if they have specials, if they have, fine practical arts.
Yeah,
you
send
see
it
those
home,
things.
find practical arts, and then
Yes.
his third teacher. Yep.
So one of the, really important things to look at here is the to-do. And I'm a huge fan of this. Like when I discovered this last year in the spring, I was like, oh, there we go. Okay. I can see the to-dos from all of the classes all in one spot. I can look at next week. I can see things that are later, things that have no due date, things that are missing, right? Like, oh, this was supposed to be done last night. Okay. So I got to go talk to my guy about that, and the things that are done. Great. 9 things turned in early. So this is great. But one of the things that, that's also listed there, and this is not where I'm pointing you to go, but it's confusing, right? Is this calendar link. When I click on this calendar link, it's going to show me this kind of view of my calendar that's a little bit different than sort of what I think maybe we would expect. It's really just showing me the sort of the assignments here. What I'm recommending is instead to actually go to calendar.google.com.
Yep.
That should look like a sort of normal calendar. And if they're logged in and they have assignments, you should see these things at the top of the page. Anything that's due as a non-time specific, but is like assigned to the day, this is due on this day, will be up at the top. That's kind of like an all-day event. And then the assignments that are assigned or rather due at a specific time, those would be found on the calendar. All this other stuff, the blue and yellow and the lunch block, I added that, or my sons, they added them for themselves. And so it took about 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that they were all in there and they had the links and all that. And it's boring, but it's so worth it, because now they get a little pop-up on their screen that says, hey, you've got your social studies class at 12:05 today, and here's the link to jump into it.
Yeah, and I think I think that maybe the disconnect, and it could just be his teachers, because I had gone to the Google.com.
Okay.
Recommended, right? But what was very helpful is that when you showed me the to-do list, when I go into that to-do list, it doesn't have anything assigned.
Yep.
And so there's only a few things that are no due date. And so because of that, it's likely not showing up in the calendar.
Yep.
And so
That
as
sounds
she finds things, it will naturally populate.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. And I would just sort of word of caution, watch out for Ninja Cat, because they sneak up on you. It's like remembering to check in on that to-do list every couple of days, just say like, I'm not missing anything, right?
So at the elementary level, most of the time, the teachers, at least at this point, probably 4th grade starts to put in some due dates, but for the most part, there aren't that many due dates put in specifically at the elementary. So the assignments are not going to populate on the calendar at the elementary level. So the to-do list is definitely the better place to look. And I know that also, at least in Reading, many of the teams are also kind of sending an overview calendar type of thing for the week. Like these are the things you have to do. And those are the better guides at this point at the elementary school. But earlier in the chat, one of the things that I did post is that it's really important for your students to bookmark. I would say bookmark Google Classroom and Google Drive, so you don't have to go looking for them. They're right there for the student to get to.
Yep.
Yeah, and honestly, at least for me, my kids do that, or my son does that. But he has a bunch of other things bookmarked. and I don't know what is, something recommended from the teacher versus something that was a click through and he liked it, so he bookmarked it, right? So, just having clarity on that would be helpful, but I don't know if that's
So one of the things that's good about bookmarks, and maybe you just want to say to him, you need to drag your Google Drive and your Google Classroom all the way over to the left, because those are the ones you're going to use the most. And he could make a folder and put all of his fun things in them so that they don't clutter his
it's more for me, right? Like he understands how to do it. It's just
right.
I don't know which ones are school approved and which ones are Wesley approved.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Well, if you ever want, I can go in and let you know.
Excellent. Any other questions from anyone else on the line?
YouTube.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, I noticed that my daughter sometimes throughout the day when she's done with the lesson, she jumps on like YouTube and she starts looking at like a smartwatch she wants to get or something like that.
Yep.
Is it possible for the school to, I don't know, create a safe list or a white list or something, because they're letting through more stuff than I want her to be able to get through when she's logged into school at home,
Yes, it is possible, but it would be, unless what we're talking about is a sort of Chromebook that is signed in with the ER9.
That's what she's doing, yeah.
So it would be fairly easy to get around that sort of in, sort of other situations. Basically just opening up a Chrome window that, that isn't signed in with the ER9. It would ignore any filters that the ER9 sort of has on it. That said, sort of creating a sort of an ultra restrictive sort of a whitelist, if you will, of allowed like videos on YouTube and things like that could get pretty tricky.
Managed account.
Yep.
That has, the whitelist, and we let on they can go to Prodigy and those type of things.
Yep.
But I don't let her on YouTube there. But when she signs into the ER9 account, then she can like start poking around on YouTube.
Yeah. Right. And it's one of the problems that we've wrestled with. Chris, I know you in particular have wrestled with that issue, instance.
Right.
But it's certainly, an ongoing frustration. And maybe Rebecca could talk a little bit about the extension of GoGuardian and what that's going to look like with respect to how teachers can monitor to a certain extent what websites the kids are going to when they're logged in on their ER9 accounts, which might help a little bit.
So I also, the trick that John used where you can open a closed tab, that definitely is a way of seeing what your child has looked at, or going to the three dots and going to history and seeing what has been open. One of the things, that I struggle with as a tech specialist is our students have to also become digital citizens and know when it's appropriate to be using things, and following the rules to keep themselves safe. One of the things I know students can't do on the Chromebooks when they're in their ER9 account, so if they don't have another account, is they cannot use an incognito window, so they can't do something behind the scenes. That I know is closed for them. But so GoGuardian that John was talking about is a program that the teachers have access to, where they are able to monitor what the students have are doing or have been doing while on the computer during their class time. They can see where they actually are, and if they have the GoGuardian screens up, meaning their students' devices up on their own computer, and they can actually, if they see somebody is on something that they're not supposed to, they have the capability to immediately close it. Now, I'm not sure to what extent that GoGuardian has been used yet, especially at the elementary school, because most of the students at RES right now are not on devices, so they may not be monitoring the devices at home yet as well. So that might be part of
Right.
And
the issue. And GoGuardian, for the most part, is new to the teachers, so it's still something that they're working on using.
and I'll say, Mike, as a parent, I have mixed feelings about if my kid is on their device at home, about a teacher sort of monitoring and sort of disciplining them for getting off track like that. I mean, during class time, I guess, in this remote environment, okay, but it's a really complex set of issues. On the digital citizenship question, that I think Rebecca alludes to, like, when our kids were, I've got twin boys, they're now in 6th grade. And when they were pretty young, we started watching YouTube videos with them. And they have, I mean, to this day, they've never watched a YouTube creator that we haven't watched with them first. And so our agreement in our house is there are certain creators that you can watch. You can watch Stampy, you can watch iBallistic Squid, you can watch, right, some of these creators that we know, Dan TDM, are really kid friendly, are sort of sensitive to the reality that their audience includes, kids. But like, we're not going to agree to you watching some of these creators that, don't take that into consideration and are sometimes saying some pretty inappropriate stuff.
Right.
Like, that's been a part, but it's a commitment, right? And frankly, there was quite a bit of time invested where along the way we said, wow, that guy's terrible. That guy's really toxic. And, would have to kind of have that negotiation with them where they, but my best friend Casey told me about him and he was saying that he did this, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and just having to say, like, yeah, but we don't like that guy because, that his approach is not in line with the way that we think we should treat each other. So, I know that doesn't solve the problem, but I
it's
a little.
it does help, because it's during the school day. She's done whatever she's supposed to do, and then she just she's very savvy all of a sudden. Tab and starts searching for things, and it's harmless stuff, but it's just we have no other than just standing on her shoulder. We have no way of knowing what she's doing.
Right, and YouTube is suggesting, like that kind of A to B, B to C. It's like, wait a second, why am I suddenly watching this, radical video of like, wait a second.
Exactly.
That can be really scary. YouTube for Kids, despite the recent issue that they had, has tended to do a pretty good job with making sure that the right content is there. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, just, outside of standing over their shoulder, it's very difficult to make sure that they're perfectly safe there.
But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Does anybody else have anything? And certainly, if anybody has comments, we are open to sort of doing this. I think we're almost at the 30-minute mark. This feels about right. Like, jumping in, sort of talking about some of the things we've been hearing recently. Fielding some questions seems like a pretty reasonable exchange for 30 minutes of investment. It's well worth our time if people are up for it. We'd be happy to do this in the future. Maybe it's every other week or something like that. So, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, look, I think the only other comment I might have is, at least for me personally, I feel like there's a barrage of different emails coming from the school depending on the number of kids that you have within the school system. And so it's not necessarily consistent timing. And so if there was something to be able to consolidate that, that would obviously facilitate parents wise. Certainly on the prepare side, it's not a facilitation for you, right? There's more work, but that, I think, with as much going on remotely for many parents, I think having some type of consolidation would be useful.
Yeah, here. We're working on that, and sort of consolidating, making sure that we're being as efficient with the communications as possible and clear. I will say the email that went out to 5th grade parents coming into 6th grade in Easton to the middle school about the summer math packet. I maybe was about to send an email saying, hey, I never got that. And then I looked and saw that I did. And so this weekend we did our summer math packet. So I definitely feel your pain. Like there's a lot of emails and you're not necessarily going to see every one of them. And the link to the summer math packet. Whoops.
And you don't have kids in all 3 buildings right now, John.
Right, exactly. I've got economy of scale, right? I just have to worry about 1 grade. So I hear you. Yeah.
I just had a question. I know that there's been a few other sessions of this. I wasn't able to join those, and it looks like they're being recorded. Are those available somewhere? Maybe you could send out links.
Yes. That they are. We'll send out a link. They're going to be on sort of the YouTube channel. We've been trying to get a centralized YouTube channel for all, so you're not having to go to like my YouTube channel or Chris's YouTube channel or Todd's YouTube channel. Like you can just go to the ER9 YouTube channel.
John is an approved creator in his own house.
Yeah, right. So I set up a Google Sites page, and Rebecca has this excellent page that has all of these sort of consolidated resources for parents to learn about Google Classroom and some of the tools that are there. And so that's going to be like the top link at that page is like, here's all the content that Rebecca has created, and then I can embed those as well. That you'll be able to get to, just so people can remember, parent-to-parent-help.com. So I just registered that address, and then it redirects to the Google site. So if you type parent-to-parent-help.com, that'll just get you to the site where we'll post those links, and we'll get those up within the next day.
And look, I don't know if it's feasible or not, right? But when something's being streamed on Zoom and then also on YouTube, right? And maybe the streaming is the part that's difficult for YouTube, but at least for me, I like to just throw it up on my TV versus having to go onto a computer or an iPad.
Yeah.
And I found it difficult to put the YouTube ones up on my TV, and it could be my lack of sophistication, but it seems to be something where unless it was something recorded or something that I can put in as a direct link into my YouTube app on my TV, it doesn't work as well.
I think once we have a unified YouTube channel, it should be easy to just find the channel, and it'll show on the YouTube app we're now live streaming.
That's
and
right.
Direct link to it.
That's exactly right. Without that unified channel, you'd essentially have to subscribe to my channel or Chris's channel or Todd's channel, in order to sort of know which one's going to be the right one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have one quick comment, Rebecca. I love your page, your technology help page. That is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. It's comprehensive. It's like everything that a parent could need. Like, it's really valuable. So that's gonna be like
you're
the main
welcome,
link at the top.
and always feel free to email me questions that you might have. If something doesn't seem to be working, usually I can figure it out and send you the fix.
Awesome. Thank you.
And the whole point of these is to kind of answer questions in real time and learn what struggles folks are going through with the technology, because everyone's using different devices, everyone has different kids in different grades in different buildings, and we're all trying to learn how we can unify the process the best we possibly can. And as more assignments come out for different grade levels in different buildings, I think the challenges and the needs are going to evolve. And so keeping in touch with Rebecca or with us will allow us to kind of know when we need to come back on and do one of these and sort of answer some frequently asked questions.
Not sure if this is a forum for it, but just a comment from middle school parent. Obviously, they have a lot of different teachers that they're going on to, especially from a remote standpoint, logging on to all the different Google Meets. It was definitely confusing at the beginning because each teacher kind of had their own method. So some had a direct link right on the page to go to the Meet. Other ones, you type in the nickname and go there. And I could definitely see confusion like between the kids writing to each other, like trying to figure out like where are the Google Meets and where am I supposed to go. So it would be great. And I know, this is a new world here of everyone figuring it out, but trying to have some consistency across the teachers might help the kids, especially as they're trying to navigate in this environment.
100%.
It
Totally
is very
agree.
much top of mind.
Yep, very much.
Very
And
much top of mind.
we're working to do that, and it's it's the benefits of having a very open framework that will be flexible for teachers to set up. That's great, but then it creates that inconsistency when a student is traversing through each one of those different sort of setups. So we're working right
Linda,
now.
my three kids are in 22 different Google Classrooms right now, and just the naming conventions have 22 different styles, which I didn't think was possible until I looked today.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So yeah.
So I can also speak to the different modes of getting into a Google Meet. One of the biggest concerns for the teachers is that the students will arrive in a Google Meet prior to their arrival. And they've found, the Google Classroom meets, the ones that are posted right under the name of the class, are supposed to work, that the students can't get in without the teachers. But as with any technology, sometimes there are glitches. And so if for some reason the student was put into the wrong group, so to speak, for some reason their settings were more open than they were supposed to be, they were finding. So we're kind of working through some of those glitches, because I'll get a call and say, hey, this student was in before I was. And so then we check their settings and have had to fix them. But many teachers find that the nickname one works best for them, because then the student only has to remember one thing. That's the way it's always going, that's the nickname that it's always going to be. And those seem to be the most protected for the teachers, that the students are not getting into them prior to the teacher arriving. So
I think what we're struggling with on the other side is that if you get there early, there's no recourse except to keep hitting refresh. Right. And my daughter gave me an earful tonight because she got scolded by a teacher for being late to class because she got there early. It wasn't set up yet. It was 1 minute past time. She wasn't allowed in yet. So she said, so I read a couple pages in a book and then I checked again. And then I was late and I was yelled at for being late. So it's kind of like.
Yeah. There's no, for some teachers, they have moved to using Zoom, which has right. that kind of waiting
room. Yeah.
Waiting room.
Right.
Place. So then you're there when the teacher does open it.
Right.
Google Meet does not have that. And I know that because many students were comfortable with Google Meet and the teachers were comfortable with Google Meet prior to, because of what they used in the spring, they weren't ready quite yet to make the transition to using Zoom. And so we're still struggling with that piece.
I would say that, Chris, that's the same thing we've definitely experienced here from home, is because the teachers, obviously, they have a whole group of kids in front of them. It's of course not starting right at the beginning of the period, right? So kids are spending a good amount of time trying to figure out, like, am I doing something wrong and I'm not getting into this? Or is the teacher not there yet? And it does create a lot of chatter among the kids trying to figure out what they're doing wrong, and then trying to keep typing it in or keep clicking or refreshing.
Because they're not even getting to a page that says Mrs. Smith's meet page. They're getting to a page that says administrator settings doesn't allow you to start this meeting. And the kids don't know whether they typed the code right or not, or what's going on. And if the teacher is late, they feel, where am I, what's going on, who's wrong, and it's just unnecessary stress all around it.
Yeah. So
yeah. There were 102 comments on one of the teacher meets this morning for the attendance.
Yeah. Yeah. And those frustrations, that was the main reason why we went through and set up our calendars, just so that we knew for sure they're clicking the right link and that it's reminding them at the right time. So, because we didn't want to have to do the, that sort of second guessing, but it's even then it can still be frustrating. So, any other questions or any other comments? Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for jumping on. Thanks for the feedback and for participating. Thanks especially to Rebecca. it's so valuable to have you on here. Thank you for joining and sharing your sort of deep knowledge in this topic. So thank you. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye now.